Welcome to this Ed Events community demo with today's guest, Ryan Tannenbaum from For.Education. Hi, Ryan. Welcome.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me here today. Yeah.
It's great to have you. You've got some exciting things to share with the community. Can you give us a little bit of an overview?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so a bit of context. I spent about 10 years in international schools working in various avenues. Eventually, the last 4 years in the IT department as the IT director. And so for the past year and a half, I've been working independently with schools as a data services manager, data solutions expert. And very much on the kind of enterprise or school level. But sometimes in that, I come up with these kind of really neat little tools that work for teachers or administrators that when I was a teacher and administrator, I was always trying to find interesting things online that I could use, especially free tools. And so this is kind of my way to give back for all of those free tools that I've used in the past. So first, I wanted to introduce something for ManageBac that if you are a diploma level coordinator and you're looking at term reports and you want to get some insights, this is a tool that can really help you visualize and understand your diploma student data. Secondly, and this is going to be a link that you can actually go to right now, and go and use it. Secondly, I have something that next week, which is probably when this airs, there's going to be a closed beta sign up. But that's a tool that I'm really excited about. It's actually an extension for ManageBac so that you can use OpenAI, like ChatGPT, to write your report cards for you based off of your student data. And so it's something that has been a fun project, definitely in the popular consciousness right now. It seemed like something that would be fun to build around.
Yeah, I can bet a lot of people are looking forward to seeing that. But let's start with the first one, the DP term grade analytics tool. Can you provide a bit of an overview of it and how it can help teachers?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So this little website here is actually the tools website. It's DP For.Education. So fairly easy to remember. You could type that into your browser. And what you do here is you would go to ManageBac and download your term data. It explains how to here, and you put it over here. And once you do that, your browser, not my computer, but your browser will convert that into a file that is really easy for these data analytics products to read. So you don't need to worry at all about your information going anywhere. Your information doesn't get sent anywhere. It's just you put it in the browser, and the browser, Chrome, is going to do some magic to make it look a little bit better. And then when you scroll down here, you'll be able to either download a file for Power BI if you're using a Windows computer, or Looker Studio if you're a Google school. And with either of these, you just plug in this file that this has created, and you'll be able to get analytics. So I wanted to introduce how first, but then we'll now kind of look at the overview of, well, why would I do this? So I'm going to stop sharing and then start again right away, just because I want to flip over to Power BI over here. And so before we get started, this is not real school data. This is fake data. And that's why I'm able to share it with you. But what I tried to do was I tried to make 4 simple pages that just give you a showcase of what's going on in my school. So over here, I can see my different subjects in this fake school. Math has the highest grade, so most likely a fake school, with computer science having the lowest grade. Also, maybe not the most usual. But I can see how many reports have gone out. What's my average student grade? How many 7s do I have of those 526 reports? And how many failing students do I have? 1 to 3s. So very rapidly, I'm already getting a sense of just basic metrics. I have just over 10% failure rate, and just a slightly higher, just exceptional student rate. What I can then go on is I can actually delve deeper. So how I like to look at dashboards is you start like you do with a microscope. If you remember, I remember back, I'm not a science student, so maybe you don't need to go as far back as me to like middle school or high school. But I remember in biology class with a microscope, you start very far out and then you slowly zoom in when you know what you're looking at. And that's how I like to approach analytics as well. And so for subject analytics, here I can get actually like an in-depth look at these different subjects. So I can look at my grade 11 data, I can look at my grade 12 data, I can look at HL, I can look at SL. So if I'm like the English teacher, I want to see how students are doing in English class. And here, this is going to show me, well, my SL and my HL English class. And it's going to show me some grade distributions across that. So if I was the subject area leader for one of these classes, and we'll click around. This biology class is kind of an interesting example where if we're looking at these classes, like the average grade for grade 11 HL over here is a 4. And for grade 12 HL, it's a little bit higher. But if we look at like this grade 11 HL, we can see like we have one student just really bringing down the grade, whereas like the rest of them are doing okay. So it makes it very easy for me to kind of get insights into outliers, and what's going on in my program. On top of that, this isn't necessarily the best data set, but let's say I had 2 different biology teachers both teaching biology HL. I probably want to see some kind of what we would call like a horizontal articulation of their assessments. So, something I frequently look at when I'm looking at, that lateral data is looking for a balance in grades, because if teachers aren't communicating necessarily about how they're assessing students, then it's possible that the scales are misaligned. That's not an incredibly unusual case. And so I find this view is really, really easy to start getting more sharp insights into what's going on in the different classes, at least. What are the different dynamics? I mean, as we click through here, generally I wouldn't take such a scattershot approach. But, between this business management 11 class, you can see like a majority of this class is struggling, whereas like a majority of this class is excelling. And so it could be even the same teacher, but you could imagine the dynamics are going to be very different and the cohorts are going to be very different. And so the more you know about the classes, the more this data probably makes sense to you. But if you are, in charge of a fair few classes, this is going to start giving you some really rapid insights. And the important word is assumptions about what your school looks like. And I believe like analytics are great tools for assumptions, which that's a loaded word. It means that you have assumptions, you have your scientific postulations, and then you go and you get the real data and you investigate to see and to dive deeper into that.
Can you perhaps tell us how it collects the data and analyzes that from ManageBac?
Sure. So in ManageBac, and on that first website that I showed, it shows exactly where to get it. But when you generate the term grade reports, ManageBac allows you to export a file. It's an XLS file, which is a little bit of an odd file that can only be opened in Microsoft Excel. It doesn't work in like Numbers or those other things. And it's not really structured very easily to get insights. So what my tool does is it knows how that file's structured, and it just kind of rips it to pieces and puts it back together so that it has very, very tidy columns. We can look at it on a data level, which is not very exciting, but it just pulls out the teacher's name and the class name and the subject, the grade, the level, the student, and their grade. And maybe a little bit more detail that we'll look into. But basically, it makes a file that is very consistent, that a computer or a program like Google Data Studio, Looker Studio, or Power BI could easily understand.
Can you perhaps take us through an example of how the tool can be used to look at student performance in class or a grade?
Yeah, so that's great. Basically, we've gone to this class level, but we're talking fairly abstractly still. We're looking at things on that level. What we are really interested in is looking at how students are performing. So the next tab here on student analytics shows me how my students are doing. And so here in this nice little chart, I can see all these, again, not real students. Faker.js generated all these names. So Bennett, Corkery, and all of these fellows. and ladies. But here we can see their HL and SL grades as well as their total. So actually, like, as useful as this metric is, the total grade in DP, it's not all that easy always to surface in ManageBac. But here I can see I have these students who have a 36, and at my bottom tier, I have students with a 15. If I click on a student over here, I can see their specific classes and how they are doing in them. Again, this is fake data, so they might not be fully enrolled in a full curriculum, and that's why. But the other thing that I'm able to do here is I could say, well, like, look, I want to see all my students who are failing, if you remember that metric at the beginning. And I do that, and here's my list of all the students who are failing. So DeMario over here, I can see exactly what he's failing. I can get that insight just super quickly, especially my HL students. Maybe I want to see who's failing classes in HL. And there's that information. And so this makes it so I don't need to look through much. I adjust the bar, I press a button, and there are my excelling students and there are my at-risk students.
That's pretty impressive. But what about keeping the data secure? How does that work within the school zone system?
So what I'm using now is Power BI, and Power BI desktop runs on the desktop. So none of this data goes online. So once you download the data from ManageBac, you'll go to my website and put it in there. But that actually doesn't go anywhere. It stays on your computer, and your computer will run the script to do the logic and download it. If you're a little bit more technically oriented, the source code's also available on that website, so feel free to look at it. And then you can put it into Power BI, and in that way, your data has never left your computer. It's never gone online. It's never gone anywhere. And so it's fully secure. If you decide to use Looker Studio, I would assume you're already a Google Workplace school, Google for Education school. And so your data is going to go into that environment, and it will exist in that cloud on that environment. And that is something that, especially if you're a European school, there are potentially data privacy issues that you'll have to look into at an organizational level. But that's got to do with your relationship with Google and how that data works. In terms of how my tool works, I never see any of your data. I don't even actually keep metrics on whether you connect to my website. As an aside, I started my business to build the products that I would like to use. And one of those is that I don't want to be a commodity, and so I don't want to treat other people like that as well.
That's very good. Can you perhaps tell us how long it takes to set up? Like, is this an involved process?
So it takes me about 30 seconds, but I've done it a few times. For the people who haven't used it before, about 3 or 4 minutes. Wow. But if you need to download Power BI, maybe a little longer. But otherwise, it's very, very quick. The tool takes less than a second to convert your data.
Wow. Is there any support when people are looking at using this?
Yeah, so on the website, all the way down at the bottom, there's like a little email. Feel free to email me. In terms of if you're especially struggling to get it working, I'm happy to help. If you're looking at additional features or more in-depth analytics, this tool's not really built to extend in that direction too much, but I'm happy to discuss other ways I can support your school.
Have there been any success stories of schools that have taken this on board so far?
I think a lot of schools, I released this just before Christmas break, so it wasn't necessarily the best time for uptake. But I did get a lot of very positive, rapid feedback about like, whoa, that was fast. This usually takes me, a couple of hours to go through. Like there is an additional tab there, the next tab, and that one will show you actually report analytics, the final tab. So it'll show you these are the teachers who didn't write a comment. And so if you have any experience with ManageBac term grades, you actually need to check that like on a page-by-page basis. But this way, I can generate a draft report before I send it off, and then look here and see like, oh, look, biology. My biology teacher didn't write a comment for this student. Hey, go ahead and do it, and it becomes much easier for me to manage this. And then also look at missing grades. So I think a lot of schools found a lot of utility in that, because it just helps you with that kind of quality control step before you send out report cards.
I can imagine many DP coordinators being keen to make use of this. Are there any limitations or restrictions they should be aware of?
So the data is based off of the data that's coming from ManageBac. So the number one request that I hear from schools is how do I get other term data and compare it? And this tool isn't really built for that. If you'd like to, you can run it twice and merge them into like a single file and add another column that says, term 1, term 2, and then start to extend the analytics that way. Because I'm kind of like a maker. I like to take things apart and then rebuild them. It's kind of what these data analytics dashboards are. And so I definitely encourage people, if they're looking to expand the utility of it, to try and look in that direction.
Can people provide feedback? Are you open to them giving you any suggestions on adding new features?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, in terms of the data that it has access to, it's a little bit limited in this way. But, no man's an island. And especially in education, we learn from our colleagues. It is that lifelong learner aspect. And so if you want to talk to me about ManageBac term data, I'm probably one of the most enthusiastic audiences you'll find in the world, because I spend just an ungodly amount of time, playing with this stuff and really thinking about how do I build this into more effective, mechanisms for schools to drive their learning, teaching and learning. Yeah.
Now, the $1 million question: is there any cost associated with using this?
No. So as long as you have, a computer and ManageBac, my service is entirely free. My tool, really. You just download it off of ManageBac and upload it to my tool, and you're good to go.
Well, I'm sure that's making a lot of people happy hearing that. That's very exciting. So that's the DP Term Grade Analytics tool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next item on the agenda, Ryan, is of course your exciting new little creation. Let's talk about that. The OpenAI report writer.
Yeah. So here's ManageBac. This is, again, not a real school account. And this is a project that's very actively in development. But I think David will be able to share a link to a closed beta sign up. So if this is something that you want to try, then please sign up. Please note that right now it doesn't work for MYP or PYP, but it does work for any other program or curriculum that you might have on ManageBac, whether that's local curriculum, Pearson, IGCSE, diploma, CP, etc. And so you can see it's actually running right now. You can't see it, but if I jump into a ManageBac class and I go to the gradebook and then I go to term grades, you'll see it. It'll appear over here on the side. And so I've built this with a very specific philosophy of mind, and that philosophy is called BYO API key. So what that means is there are directions. There's going to be expanded directions on how to get an API key from OpenAI. So that this is just a tool to be able to bring ChatGPT, OpenAI functionality into ManageBac. But I don't really control your connection with them. You're going to go and get that API key. They used to. I don't know if they still do. I think they still do. They used to give you $18 for free to generate report cards. No, to use their AI generative tool. You can use that to generate report cards with this. I will say that I've been, running it hundreds of times over the past couple of days, and it's cost me about 35 cents or 40 cents. It's very affordable. But we'll jump in and look at it. So here's my little logo over here. When it's active, you'll see it on this page. I can show you, like, here's an MYP course. It won't be active on the MYP course. So if you see it, then you can use it. And when I click on it, it says, please put in your API key. So I'm going to go and take an API key. This is a secret key, so I'm not going to share it with you. And then if you get to this screen, this means it worked. So I'm going to add a fair bit of detail about like what these different things mean here, but they have a lot of different models that you can use. This one is their most expensive, but still quite cheap model. The same one that ChatGPT uses, but there's like, I think 60 here or so that you can play with. The max tokens, that's really how long text can it generate. And the temperature is, if it's 0, the answers are going to be very formulaic. If it's 1, they're going to be a little bit more exciting, which generally, like, they're report cards, but you know, it's going to take more risks in how it answers them. So when you're here, I could just show you, because I put in my API key and I don't want to do anything else. I can click generate reports. And just as a safety measure, I said, please check, like, it's going to send this data to OpenAI. So, you know, it's good that you know what we're sending. And what I tried to do is I tried to make it so that we're not sending much student data. So it always tells OpenAI, write a report card for a student named asterisk. And then when that report comes back, your browser, it knows the student's name because it read it from this ManageBac page. It's going to replace that itself. And so I can change this and I can write whatever I want here, and that's what's going to go for this student. But the built-in result works pretty well. It looks at what the student's grade is, then it says how they're doing. And so I can hit generate reports and you'll see it is thinking right here. And there they come, you know, but there they come across 15 different students. And so you can see here, like, this student is failing. So it says they've been struggling in IB English A. You know, in order to be improved, they need to be more proactive in their learning. They must ask questions and seek help. Like, they're not terrible. Sometimes it does make assumptions. Like here, they must attend all classes and come prepared with the required materials. So you definitely need to vet it. Yes. But it does give you a foundation. On top of that, sorry, go ahead.
I'll just jump in and say it's sort of a step in the direction of being able to review information. So when it comes to writing reports, you have something that you're there to work with, rather than, you know, a blank document or manually going through and creating a mechanical process of implementing, you know, reports which end up looking very similar. So this gives teachers something based on the data relevant to that student that they can then fashion and work with into something that they put their name to.
Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, it's like fun new technology. So I thought giving people kind of a new context to work with it. So there are some other features that I built in, like I can feed it class information. So here, you know, normally when I write report cards, I have my generic blurb about my course. And then, you know, I get into more details. So I could say in my class, in my literature class, we read Portrait of Dorian Gray. Hopefully it's that type of gray, by Oscar Wilde. I think it actually knows if I get it wrong. 1984, let's say we read those. And then I can say generate class details. And this will generate a blurb for me about my class that it's now going to prepend to any report that it generates after that. So, you know, hopefully we're not really exploiting this, but it is kind of neat, especially if you don't necessarily have like an easy fluency with words. As you said, David, it can give you a foundation that you can then edit and then refine, right? So like the course will explore the social and historical context of the novel, as well as literary devices and techniques. Analyze the text from multiple perspectives, including gender, class, and race. Well, you know, maybe class or race, like these aren't very race-heavy novels. So it could be that. The other thing that it does is it has kind of this basic scale where regardless of what your grading criteria is, I just set up like, oh, if it's a 7, then say like they're doing excellent work. But you could actually say that. You could say like, if they're getting a 7, emphasize something else. You can just change the prompt right here, and it will update the prompt for every single student. You also have like the option here to click this, which will say like, it'll tell OpenAI exactly what grade the student received. And I found when you do that, it's going to come back and say like the student got a 6. So if you want to say that, then you can. And then the other thing you can do is you can say, you know what, these kids are getting 0s, 1s, and 2s. I don't want to auto-generate that. I want to do that myself because like they're struggling. And so by unchecking these, then it's not going to generate it for them. Finally, under additional parameters, I can put in other generic text that I want to feed to it. So I could say, you know, because this is just for fun, we could say like, write all reports in the style of Dr. Seuss. You know, and so now you'll see like this has gone out. We'll probably have a couple of kids who are not going to generate here. So, you know, it's done that. I can also say maybe, oh, Florencio, I don't want to generate this one. And then I can say, you know, generate reports. And it'll go out and it'll generate those reports for me, hopefully in the style of Dr. Seuss. So I've didn't touch because I told it not to generate it. But here you can see, here's my blurb about the class. And then, well, maybe we're not getting it in the style of Dr. Seuss. Or maybe that was an old one. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Maybe
oh, there we go.
Okay. Would you be able to read that out for us as that comes up?
Okay, so for Candace and English A, Literature HL, their performance is quite swell. With their work, they have excelled, and their effort is quite swell. It's not the best rhyme. In Portrait of Dorian Gray, their understanding was okay, the themes they could explain, and the characters they knew by name. In 1984, they could see the dangers of a world so free, the government's control they could see, and the consequences of being free. I have issues with its rhyme scheme. In class, they are quite engaged, and their questions are so sage, their participation is quite grand, and their answers are quite grand. To improve their performance, they should take some time to rehearse, practice their writing and their reading, and their understanding will be leading. Overall, Candace is doing great. Their work is quite first rate. Their effort is quite grand, and their understanding is quite grand.
Now, we probably don't want to recommend that to people, but how cool is that? That is cool.
It's kind of fun. So, you know, at the very least, it's a pretty unique application. And I think it gives us insight into maybe some of the directions that this technology can go. In developing this, I kind of had to make a lot of movements forward in my understanding of the technology. And so at first it was like, oh, look, I'm going to generate report cards. And then it's, no, I'm not doing that. Actually, what my app extension is doing, it's really helping you create a targeted prompt to send to OpenAI. Because I think like that's what it is. It's really, how do we start to learn to talk to these machines to do what we want it to do? And so finding ways to automate that and enhance the functionality of that, that's really what my focus was.
It's absolutely outstanding. And I think, you know, it emphasizes the importance, and something I've, you know, always sort of stressed many years ago as well in leadership, was the importance of reports being accurate. And, you know, what you're working on there is referencing student achievement. So it's actually hopefully making the comments reflect their achievement and their scores. So pretty cool, and it certainly makes life potentially a bit easier when it comes to report writing for a lot of teachers. So that's something I'm sure a lot of people are excited to see, and looking forward to how that might develop. Now, is again, how do schools go about doing that?
So I'm going to be hopefully releasing this in the future, just on the Chrome Web Store, so that anyone can get it. You get an OpenAI API key, you put it in there, and that's done. There's, again, no cost on my end, or from me. It's just free, and I'm releasing it to you. The only thing is, like, you are definitely trusting a machine to write like
Mhm.
a fairly important document. So
Yes.
there is a responsibility on your end to not blindly trust it, you know. Um, but in terms of using it, it should be just as hassle-free as possible. But before we release it, I do want to do a closed beta so that people beyond just myself are trying it and they're saying, hey, this worked well, this didn't work. Hey, I tried this prompt, it's much better. You know, maybe we can refine that. And so if you're interested in signing up for that, David has a link. It will be on my website. I'll put it on the top of my website there. It'll be a Google form. And you can go there and, you know, just let me know. I'm basically just looking for teachers who have access to ManageBac and teach a non-PYP MYP subject. So if that sounds like you, you know, feel free to try to sign up.
Fantastic. Ryan, it's been great to have you here on the Ed Events community, having a chat and sharing some fantastic resources and tools that you've been working on. And there is, of course, your website, For.Education. There's the logo on the bottom of the screen. Once again, thank you very much, and look forward to having a chat in the future again. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much, David.